Hello, everyone. So I'm back, and I'm joined as we are every week by Shayla Brown, who is obviously bad. I had the YouTube open, so we're going to talk about the Bad Batch, episode 5, I believe,
Hmm.
the return. Now, I love this. I love this episode. I'm not gonna lie. I think this is the best, one of the best episodes so far in this show. But what were your kind of overall thoughts on this?
I love how character driven it was. Like in terms of plot, there wasn't much going on. I mean, we had a big monster, which is typical Bad Batch. But I love how it was really focused on the relationships and the character dynamics, and because that's something that drew me to the Bad Batch to begin with was like this family who are all trying to find their own place and purpose. And we get to see firsthand how that can clash and how um, things can go wrong and things need to resolve. And I just love watching relationship dynamics unfold and refold sometimes. A reconnection and forgiveness, and I love those things. I think it's beautiful.
But it's interesting you say that because I think the way that they kind of they had their reconnection was fascinating, right? Because you had this weird situation where we kind of talked about this last episode about how would they be able to reconcile the two, like this conflict, either were they going to do it on screen or off screen, right? And we're kind of talking with them, we're like, I don't want them to do it off screen, I want them to do it on screen, I want to see this tension. And they did it better than I think either of us guessed. Like, I guess they would kind of do it on screen.
Mhm.
I didn't think they would. They just did it so effectively. You had these moments where you had Hunter and you had oh my god, why can't I remember his name?
Crosshair.
Cross. Yes, thank you. You had them kind of fighting, and it was interesting because it's kind of like you think about like two parents fighting, but they're trying to stay away from their kid, right? With when they kind of go outside, stay away from Omega, and
Hmm.
and kind of try to resolve their differences, right?
Hmm.
It was I found that a very fascinating dynamic where it's, again, it is kind of like those two parents trying to kind of protect their kid from the conflict that they're having, right? And eventually they do have to kind of just come together and figure stuff out.
Yeah, and even in spite of that, even in spite of all the conflict that they have with each other, and clearly there is beef on both sides, even in the midst of that, when Omega is involved and like Hunter doesn't want her to go on the mission, but she says, actually, I want to go because I feel like I have a right to. Um, Crosshair can tell that she's upset about Hunter not wanting her to go, and he's like, even though he has a lot of things and unresolved things at this point that he hasn't sorted out with Hunter, he's like, hey, don't stick it to him. He's just worried about you. He's still defending him, even though they're very much on opposing sides right now, and there's fractured trust, which I thought was beautiful.
And by the way, just side note, actually, because we can talk about this, but like, was it just me, or were you yelling at the screen, "Don't go, Omega! Don't let her go"? Because I really thought it was gonna be a trap. I was like, you can't do this. You can't let her go when they're literally just looking for her.
Yeah, I'm gonna be nervous every episode now because I don't think anywhere is safe for her.
I
Um,
don't want her to stay on the planet, stay safe, so they can't get what they want.
I know, but I think they're gonna find them regardless, and that makes me nervous. And I think it would be worse if they were split up because then like there's less of it. Like if she was left with just Wrecker on the planet, that's less of odds that they can. That's more odds that they can actually get her. Um, but it's gonna
But I don't
stress
like
me
going to
out every
Imperial
episode.
bases.
Yeah, luckily this one was abandoned.
Yeah, I didn't think it was gonna be. I thought there were gonna be. I thought that it was gonna just be. Nope, there was a ton of people here, and but it was abandoned. It was good. I'm. It is weird. Another snow planet. I feel like we get less of those in Star Wars, um, compared to
I kind
especially
of
the
like
desert
them.
planets.
I kind of like them because, as a Canadian, I'm like, yes, I understand this. I mean, obviously,
I don't
the
get the
the
desert thing. I know it's weird.
the temperature is more extreme on those snow planets. But like I get it to an extent where I do not understand the desert planets. I'm just like, yeah, that'd be gross. But I could live on these snow planets. Not that I'd want to because I don't like the snow, but like at least I understand them, but I don't get the deserts.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I definitely think that I really don't. Yeah, I just I like the fact they're using different planets because Star Wars gets boring, and I watch Dune, and again, you're talking about desert planets. Like, can we stop with the stupid desert planets? I don't know, it's weird, and it's also like you don't get creative with
Yeah,
the
like
no.
I think your audio. Oh, okay, maybe you're back.
There you are.
Yeah.
So when we look at the way that I guess because we talked last time about how they were going to resolve this kind of figuring out where the planet is. They still haven't done that, by the way. They
No.
still haven't figured anything out. So,
No.
what was the point of this episode from a plot perspective if they actually haven't figured anything out?
I couldn't tell you. I think the point of the plot was to advance the characters, which will in turn advance the plot in time. But really, when you look at overall story arch beyond the characters, they didn't get much from this data pad. At least for now. I mean, next week is a double episode feature, and I do not know what they are going to be about anymore because those episode titles are called Infiltration and Extraction, and I thought that we would be going to Tantis or something, but now I don't know because we literally don't have a planet, so I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing. So I look at the episode titles. I'm like, they're going to figure out where the planet is between this episode and the next one. I have to assume,
Yeah,
right?
maybe. Or like at the beginning of next episode. I think next episode's gonna be an Echo and Rex double feature.
I don't know. I don't. I feel like they're just. I feel like we're gonna see them. I think they're gonna figure out where the planet is, and um, and yeah, I feel like we're gonna figure out where the planet is, and they're just gonna start going. And I think they're gonna try to, because I think they still want to do some more stuff with the story. It feels like they
Mm-hmm.
do, and I think they want to. I think they kind of just want to kind of yada yada to the point where they get to the planet, so they can continue progressing the plot. I don't think they're like. I think they spent too much time trying to figure out where this damn planet is. I don't think they
Yeah.
want to waste any more time on that.
Yeah. But I don't know what the extraction is because like I think it feels unrealistic to me to be like, okay, we're gonna free all the prisoners in episode 7. Like I don't think that's gonna happen. So what are we trying to get from this facility?
So my hunch is they go in, infiltrate the base. Omega gets captured, and then they have to get her out again. That's my guess, because that just seems to be the pattern here.
Yeah, that would make sense. Or they're trying to find out, like they're trying to extract information on Omega's specific, like what makes her different from the other clones. They're trying to figure that out. I don't know.
Or the whatever project they're working on, and they want to whatever they need her for.
Yeah, because I we see in a teaser she's talking to someone and she says, I need to know who I am. Because Omega herself doesn't know what sets her apart. We all know that she's special. We all know that she's different in some way, and they've dropped hints on to what it is. But we still don't know. And so maybe they want to find out because when you don't know, it makes it more dangerous for you.
Yeah, and well, also she probably wants to figure out why they're trying to find her and capture her, right? Like they want to know that, and maybe they will. That'll be the one thing on the tablet that they'll be able to find is kind of what she has going on. That is, you know, that they she'll kind of figure more about what they want with her
Mhm.
specifically,
Mhm.
and not as much maybe about where the planet is. But
Mhm.
there is still so much story to tell with this, and there's so many characters who they promised us, which we haven't gotten yet.
I know.
Um,
I'm still waiting for Wolf and Fennec and Ventress, obviously.
Ventress as the big one, yeah.
Yeah, that's the big one. But I'm like, where's Fennec? Like, I was promised I was promised so many things, and obviously we just need to wait and be patient. But I'm not a patient person, so
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with this show, and because I think again, I'm just wait every episode. I'm just waiting. I'm like, Ventress now, Ventress now. No, okay. Like I feel like and I don't know how they all connect into the story because it feels so again detached from these other characters and where you'd expect them to be. So it'll
yeah.
be interesting to see where they kind of how they kind of factor into this and how they kind of build the story out so that these characters can be impactful.
Yeah, if you had like told me, okay, place your bets for returning characters to the Bad Batch, like cameos, Asajj Ventress wouldn't have even been on my list of consideration. And obviously now that I have read Dark Disciple because she's dead, but like even before I read
Yeah,
Dark Disciple, I wouldn't have even considered. Like I would have laughed. I'm happy, but like I don't know where she fits, and that's part of the excitement.
had I not assumed she was dead, actually, I think I would have probably had her as one of the characters who I think could have come back, but mainly just because we saw it so much with Rebels, where we saw these characters who we didn't really expect to see from the Clone Wars show up in Rebels, right? And so
Mhm.
I think that like witnessing that transition, seeing a lot of those characters where it's like, oh wow, like Darth Maul probably being the biggest, most obvious one in that regard,
Mhm.
kind of being like, oh wow, they just really brought Darth Maul back. I don't think any like that would have even surprised me. If anything, I would be expecting it. I think the fact that I just kind of figured that Ventress was dead
Mhm.
was really the reason I would not have thought it.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I think it looks like everyone on the team is now in like a good place. They're not there's no one trying to like, you know, no one's angry at each other. It seems like
Mhm.
we're getting some resolutions from in that perspective, which is good. It's good they gave us a whole episode to kind of digest that and kind of explore that and kind of understand what Hunter was feeling as well and
Mhm.
why he was kind of maybe a little bit angry at everyone really, right? Omega he was kind of
Mhm.
angry at or worried about, right? And so I
Yeah.
think we got to interesting things which maybe make Hunter look a little bit less like the big hero that he we kind of assumed he was.
Mhm. I think he's angry at himself most of all. And Crosshair can see that, and that's why in that confrontation, Crosshair he very much always says these things with the intent to hurt. Just because it's a defense mechanism. So he goes for Hunter's weak spots. He's like, you're the like Omega escaped with my help and you didn't do anything. And this this is your fault. He's not saying it because he means it, but he knows that Hunter believes it and wants to hurt. And so I think it's really interesting to know that Hunter is, you know, very much blaming himself. And I hope to see some resolution for that, and like someone to tell him that like the whole world is not on his shoulders at some point because he's carrying a lot.
Yeah, and I think the other thing when you say that, the interesting thing is like you think about him being a sniper and the fact that he can kind of pinpoint and attack those kind of not necessarily through like physically like he would as a sniper, but kind of more attack those little weaknesses and kind of it's the perception he talked about at the beginning of the episode, right? Of
Mhm.
why like one of the factors in being a sniper, right?
Yeah, that's a good point because he not only like you have to be patient and observant of your environment around you, but like he is also hyper aware and can detect like the weak points in human emotions too, which I hadn't considered is that like, that may not that's probably like intrinsically connected with his observancy of being a sniper. And what I also find interesting about Crosshair is that um he regains more humanity the more that he loses what makes him valuable to the empire. Um his humanity is intrinsically tied with the loss of what makes him useful to the empire in quotes. Like he his hands are becoming shaky and he's no longer like a strong marksman, but he's a better human with the loss of that. And I think that's a really cool way of showing that. And like cuz Crosshair from the beginning has been trying to find purpose, and he's now lost that purpose in what he thought his purpose was, and now he has to like kind of figure out who he is without, that special skill. I mean, he's still a good shot, but he's not perfect, which was what he
He's
used to be.
53% or whatever they said at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
So can I
I was happy
disagree
to
with
see
you?
AZ.
Can I disagree with you on one thing you said there? Because
Sure.
I mean, you might be right, but if you are, I'm going to be very angry at the show for doing this because I think what you kind of alluded to, and just correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of alluded to the idea that maybe maybe that he won't be getting his shot back, right? Maybe his hands won't kind of stabilize. I don't. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like you're kind of implying that you think that he's going to kind of be like this kind of going forward.
I don't think that he has to necessarily be like this going forward forever, but I do think he has to lose it, and he has to kind of be humbled in the way to like see that his value is not tied to his genetic enhancements and his modifications, and his value is actually what he brings to himself as a human being, and how he like can care for other people and his family, and that's what his family loves about him, and can value him and give him a purpose rather than his shot. But I don't think it's something that has to be gone forever. I just think he kind of needs to be humbled a bit.
So what I took it to mean, and what I think it will mean, and I might be wrong about this, but I really hope I'm right because I think this would be the most poetic way for this to go. Is I think that his hands are shaky not because of anything physical, and I think they're going to figure that out at some point. Is that it's not anything physically wrong with him, but instead it's just he not knowing who he is or not knowing who he is anymore. Because you think about him at the beginning when he was with the Bad Batch, right? He knew who he was, right? He then was with the Empire. He knew who he was. Betrayed the Empire, and then his hands got all shaky, right? Because then he was like, "Wait a second, I wasn't that with the Bad Batch who I thought I was. I wasn't with the Empire who I thought I was. So who am I?" And I think the almost the lack of calm and the lack of like understanding of who he is almost create causing his hands to shake, and I think he will come to terms with that, and that'll be the thing, and it'll kind of be like this moment either toward the end of the series, or maybe even next episode, where he kind of realized, wait a second, the only way I can be effective is by knowing who I am and by kind of embracing who I am, whoever that is. And I think that's what's going to make it's going to kind of click, and he's going to be able to kind of find his rhythm and kind of start shooting again.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think that could be very possibly what happens. And like I would like it.
Because I think it's a good way to kind of tie the character, and also like because like if there is a moment where it's like and I this if I had to kind of imagine how it would happen, it would be like he's trying to save Omega and he needs to hit a shot, right, and he has to be precise, whatever, in the situation, and that's a moment where for him it clicks. You see a flashback or whatever, and he kind of realizes who he is, and he realizes what he means to Omega, and that in that moment it kind of instantly his hands stop shaking. He knows who he is, and he's kind of able to kind of get back to who he was.
Yeah. Yeah, I would support that idea.
It feels very much like something that they would do it. I think that's kind of yeah. Again, I think that's what they would do. Now we do have to pick an MVP for this episode.
Okay.
I know. Do you want to go first? Do you have yours?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, my MVP for this episode is Echo because he
Oh,
he first of all, it's his returning episode for the season, which is really exciting. But also, um he was dealing with Hunter and Crosshair's bullshit this whole episode, and was the one who could kind of help ease the tension a little bit between the two, and keep Omega out of it and make sure that like they could sort their shit out without bringing her into it. And also like recognize he's the one who can get his head on straight and be kind of a little bit of an unbiased mediator, and be like, okay guys, cut the bullshit. We have a job to do. Stop arguing. Like he knows when to put his foot down and when to let them have at each other. And so I really liked how he was kind of, a bit of a mediator, a bit of like I always joke that Echo is the mom of the group. And he was definitely being the mom this
I
episode
feel like
because
that's Omega more than Echo. If we're being like in that last episode, if we're being honest.
I think it's both of them. I mean, Omega specifically towards Crosshair is definitely like she knows how to scold him and like stop arguing with Hunter. You're doing nothing. But Echo is the one who's like, let them work it out. They'll figure it out. Um, and after they came back and they had worked it out, he was like, look, they did. They worked it out, and there was no blood this time. So this implies that this has happened before, which makes me interested because like it implies that Hunter and Crosshair just got into physical altercations even before all of this shit. So I wonder if Echo has had to deal with this from the beginning, and also like Echo being raised in a battalion with like millions of brothers beside him, he's probably used to these fights on a much smaller scale, but like he knows that sometimes these other clones just need to like have a confrontation. So he kind of knew how to handle it, while offering Omega the guidance that like just let them deal with it, and it'll be fine. Which it was.
What and I imagine kind of that, when they kind of like I wasn't surprising when Echo said that, because you have these two, very alpha leader type people, right? With two very different perspectives on how to go about things, right? You have Hunter, who is a lot more of a, let's look at kind of the skills that we have, and sometimes that those skills mean we should be a little bit more aggressive. I don't think that's Crosshair's thing ever, to be very aggressive. Like, just to be like, I don't think that, and I can imagine, I can completely see them disagreeing. My MVP, I'm kind of gonna break the rule of one person. I'm gonna kind of have two people, but not really, because only one of them appeared in the episode. Okay, you'll understand in a second. So my double MVP, I guess, is Tack and Omega. So the reason I say Tack is because there's a moment where the Echo mentioned him, and because that was the only he would been able to open the pad without them having to go to the ice planet, right?
Mhm.
And it was this moment of like unity and sadness between all of them, and it also made you realize, like, quite literally how important he was for the team, and how many things could have been avoided if he was still there.
Yeah. We wouldn't have an
And then,
episode. We wouldn't have
well,
this
this
episode if he was still there.
right. Well, and that's why I'm like literally on the word of most value. Like, that quite literally is the definition of that, and him not being there just proves how important he is, that he could have made this entire episode pointless if
Yeah.
he was there.
Hmm.
And then Omega, again, much like what your argument for Echo was, but being more of the, especially kind of trying to make sure, because I think the one thing is, if you look at kind of the characters in this show, I think the one who's the most of a flight risk is a Crosshair, right? Like, the one who I would fully expect to run away and just say, I'm not dealing with any of this shit, I'm going somewhere else, is Crosshair, right? So
Hmm.
I think the fact that Echo was able to keep him, or not Echo, sorry, Omega was able to keep him, even though Echo did a good job with kind of keeping, making sure everything just kind of stayed in order. I think the fact that Crosshair didn't run away was not because of Echo, it was because of Omega.
Yeah,
And
I
so I
agree.
think I think that like hit, because I don't like I truly believe if Omega wasn't there, Echo, or not Echo, sorry, Echo would not have been able to keep Crosshair and Hunter together, and one of them, probably Crosshair, would have just run away and would have gone off to do his own thing or whatever. I think Omega was the reason he stayed and tried to work it out. And
Hmm.
I think that kind of is why I would say, over, as much as I like what Echo did with between the two of them, I think Omega did more for the person who I believe is the bigger flight risk and the one who was more likely to run away in the middle of the night than try to deal with this.
Yeah, I agree, and I think like it just goes to show how far we've come because he in season one just really him and Omega did not click, but now like looking at it, he's the one that or no, she's the one that he trusts the most in the batch, and like even like she makes him like sort of chuckle and smile a little bit in this episode, and it's like, oh my god, it's like a totally different side of you because we haven't seen this at least since the Clone Wars. So yeah, she's definitely like the one that's making him stay around is because he's grown to care about her, and he truly does value her no matter how much snark he's gonna throw in the way of that. They truly do respect and care for each other, which I think it's a lovely dynamic, as I've said before. But like, it just every time they're on screen together, it just makes me happy because it's done so well.
Yeah, and I think with that being said, unless you have anything else to add for this episode, I think we did a good job. We basically talked about the episode for as long as the episode ran, so that's always
Oh,
a good
look
thing.
at us!
I know, it's crazy.
Wow.
So, do you have anything else to say before we kind of wrap it up for today?
No, I'm good.
Perfect. So next week we will have another long episode because it'll be 2 episodes together.
Mhm.
Um,
Double
yeah,
feature.
it'll be interesting to see what happens because there's a lot of stuff that can happen. And if Avengers comes, we might talk about Avengers for an hour and not even talk about the rest of the episodes. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.